Hey there, welcome to this video, and in this particular video we are going to talk about Google Gemini integration with Spring Boot applications. Before talking about Google Gemini, I want to talk about artificial intelligence. Now, I don't need to tell you why you should have artificial intelligence or AI related features integrated into your applications. The world around you is moving towards AI. There are lots of applications that you use daily and they are integrating AI into themselves, right? You'll see AI related use case pop up a lot. So it's likely that if you're working in an organization, your boss might ask you to integrate AI related features into your application that you're building, right? And it's crucial that you have the knowledge of AI today and how you can make good use of it as well. So we are going to talk about Google Gemini and how you can integrate it with Spring Boot. Now, why Google Gemini? So I posted a content in past or a project in past wherein we integrated OpenAI APIs into our application. Now, the thing with OpenAI is you need to add a little bit of funds into the OpenAI account for the API to function correctly. And they don't have a free tier yet. Of course, they had free credits wherein if you sign up for a new OpenAI account, you get some $5 free credits or so. And I have got a lot of complaints from students that they have not got the credits. So they sometimes give credits, or whether that offer is valid or not, I don't know. Okay, because I have been using OpenAI for a while now, like since they launched the API, I have an OpenAI account, and I had got free credits of $5 when I created the account, but it's been a while, right? But coming to Google Gemini, they have a free tier. OpenAI does not have a free tier. So Google Gemini has a free tier wherein if you are making limited use of AI models or their APIs, then you can make use of Google Gemini for free. Now, this is very useful for people like you, because if you're working in an organization or if you're a fresher and if you want to create some AI related projects that can shine on your resume and help you land a better job, then in that case you might want to make use of AI models like Google Gemini, because you can use it for free without spending a dime, right? So you can use it for free, integrate in your applications, and for small POCs, it's a great option. And of course, if you're working in an organization and if you want to integrate AI, then too Google Gemini is a great option, because they have some good models coming up and the current models are also doing really well. So that's why we are talking about Google Gemini. Okay, the number one reason of bringing in this content for Google Gemini is the free tier, so that everybody can make use of it, can build projects, and can deploy it onto a remote server. So you can even deploy it for free. So you can actually use AI for free now. You can build the application and you can deploy it for free. If you're not sure as to how you can deploy the Spring Boot application with front-end database and a backend to a remote server for free, then you should check out a video on my channel. There is a video titled Deploy Full Stack Applications for Free, right? So you should check that out. So you should build the projects using AI models for free, and you can deploy it and you can showcase it in your resume. So that's a tip that I would want to give you, and that is something that I would want to see from all my subscribers here. If you're building any sort of interesting projects, feel free to comment below and let me know the projects that you're building. That of course makes me happy, and yeah, it's good to share with the community as well, right, for ideas related stuff. So that's Google Gemini. Now, what are we going to build over here? We're going to build this kind of a chatbot or a Q&A bot, you can say, whatever you want to call it. So how this will function is, it is running on my local host. You have to ask a question. Whatever question you ask, you submit, you get a response from the AI. So if you submit the question, it goes to the backend. Backend is going to process it and send it to the Gemini servers, like Google servers, and you'll get the response, and the response is passed and displayed over here. So for example, if I want to say what is artificial intelligence or what is AI over here, if I say submit, you'll see loading and you should see a response. You can see artificial intelligence, and here you have all the other data. Okay, you have usage metadata over here, and you are seeing prompt response tokens over here. Okay, So there's a typo. This is pro response. So it should be prompt response tokens and total tokens. But never mind. You understand what it means, okay? And it's displaying you the information, the required information for you all. And here you'll also see citation information. You can see these are citations that you're getting from the Google Gemini servers. Okay. So yeah, that's the simple use case that we are going to have. It's a Q&A bot or a chat bot, whatever you want to call it. All right. And you can you can improve on this. You can integrate into your already existing applications, or you can create some sort of an apps. But the knowledge of how you can integrate is what is covered in this video, along with a front end. So I hope this will be useful. Do watch this video till the very end, and let me know in the comments below who you are and where you are joining in from. I would be happy to know you. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Hey there. So now it's time that we understand what Gemini is. So Google Gemini, or I should say Gemini. Gemini is a product of Google, and it's a suite of next generation AI models that has been developed by Google itself. Okay. So if you search for Google Gemini, you will see all these search results. You'll also see a good amount of information here on Wikipedia on the right hand side. Okay. But here you will get the official website over here. Okay. So you can see this is gemini.google.com. You have the app on Android, iOS, mobile app availability, and all the information. So you can head over to this website, and here is where you would come. Also, if you've heard of Bard in past, so Gemini was known as Bard initially, and then later on Google renamed it to Gemini. Okay, so it's developed by Google. You can see over here. Okay, so this is what the website looks like as of now. Now I'll tell you over here that they keep on changing their websites every now and then. Okay, and like how fast this field is evolving, the field of AI. So it's likely that you might see a different layout when you're watching this video and coming to view this particular product of Google's. Okay, you have few links over here. You can just go through. You have a button to sign in. Now you can sign in using your Google account. Okay, so just hit sign in and just create an account over here if you don't have a Google account. So after you sign in, this is what the interface that you're going to see over here. Okay, now this is something like ChatGPT. Okay, if you've heard of ChatGPT, you can ask questions over here and you'll get the response. Okay, so you can say, what are computers, for example. Okay, and you'll get a response from Gemini, Google Gemini over here. Now here you have the list of models. You can change the models. Like I'm right now on 1.5 Flash. You have 2.0 Flash Experimental. Now I'll tell you, you might see new models appear depending on when you're watching this video. Okay, so Google releases a new model every now and then. Okay, they keep on improvising on the existing models that they have. Okay, but don't worry, new models are better. So you might even see a change in the layout as well. Okay, so don't worry about that. Concepts is what are important, and layout and all can keep on changing. Okay, on the left hand side, you'll see this became a chat, and I already had some previous chats. I've been using this tool a lot. Okay, so this is about Gemini. Now what we need is we want to make use of Gemini into our application. For that, we need an API key. So just search for Google Gemini API and you'll see some search results like this. Okay, so you'll see something like this. Just click on like ai.google.dev. Okay, so if you come over here and if you're signed into the account, okay, you'll see over here AI for every developer. Okay, and you can just read about all different models that they have and what all this website has to offer you. So if you're building with AI, you have to come to this website ai.google.dev. Okay, and you can see the list of models that you will have over here. Okay, you can go through the documentation. You can check out the pricing. So I'll click on pricing over here. Okay, this is important because people would want to know how much they have to pay. So first of all, I would like to tell you that Gemini models come free of cost. Okay, up to a certain usage. So there is a free tier, which I think is pretty good. So if you are building some sort of Spring Boot applications or any sort of applications, not even Spring Boot, any sort of applications that you're building, okay, you can make use of free tier and you can showcase them in your resume. right? You can even deploy them for free. The application can be deployed for free on a server, remote server, and you can create an AI based application to showcase it in your resume or improve your portfolio. So that is something that what you can do with this free tier. It's pretty generous, I would say, like 15 requests per minute. It's pretty good, no charge as such. Okay, and this is a model that you get, Gemini 1.5 Flash. Now, like I said, there will be new models coming up depending on when you're watching this video, but don't worry about the new models. New models are better. Okay, so what matters is I'm talking about pricing over here. Okay, so these are the things that you get in free pricing, and there is a pay as you go as well. So if your project grows and if you're generating some sort of revenues, you build some sort of SaaS and you're generating some sort of revenues, you can of course upgrade here as well. Okay, you can even change the model depending on what you're looking for. Okay, but pricing is something that I want to shed some light on. Okay, you have Gemini API docs. You can go through the documentation. Okay, you can see like how you can make use of different models over here in your source code. Okay, now if you see over here, for making use of this API, you need an API key. How do we get an API key? So just head over to the home page where we were. Okay, now of course you can explore this website. You can check out the different tabs, solutions, models, and all of that. I'll leave that for you to explore. Okay, over here you have an option saying explore models in Google AI Studio. So just click on this. Okay, and you will be taken to this particular page over here. Okay, now over here you can create your own prompts. You can set the system instructions and you can chat with the model over here. This is something that you can do. For example, here you can see over here, trip recommendation, convert an unorganized text into structured tables. So if I select this, you'll see like how, so this is an example that Google gives you, and you can see how this unstructured text was given or converted into a very nice table for you to play with, right? So this is the power of AI over here. Okay, you can like, dislike, give feedback and all of that. This is a dashboard or sort of, I should say console, where you can like customize and play around. You can see over here, you can select the model, you can customize the temperature over here, the token. So pricing, by the way, when you work with AI models, pricing is basically calculated in terms of tokens. Okay, and here you can see the token over here, like how many tokens were being used in this request and response. Okay, so yeah, that's all over here. And here you have this button to get an API key. So you can click over here, you'll be taken to this page. Okay, and I have a couple of API keys already created. You can create your own API key by clicking over here. You can say create an API key and you'll be asked for some information and you can just have that API key saved somewhere. Right? So API key is very sensitive, let me tell you. Okay, it's not supposed to be shared with anyone, because if you share this API key with anyone can do the request to Google servers and use the AI models on your behalf, and you will be billed for that because it's your API key. So it's pretty sensitive stuff. Be sure like not to hard code it in the code, not to push it on GitHub, and just have it secretly with you. Okay, so this is the this is also a curl request over here. So if you want to make a curl, if you want to make a request to the AI model, you can make use of this. Okay, and you can create an API key. So what we are going to do is we are going to create an API key and have it with us over here for usage in the project over here. Okay, so yeah, that's about how you can get the API key. Also, what I would do is I would just copy this information and we would head over to Postman. Now here in Postman, what I would do is I had copied that curl request, right? I copied this curl request. I'll come over here. I'll say import and I'll paste that curl request. Okay. So you will see there is a new request being created. This is the name of the request. Okay. I'll just call it Gemini AI. Okay. And it's being added to this collection. Okay. So I'll say just add it to Hello World app. So there are 3 collections you can see here in the background. I'll say import. So this will get imported over here. Okay. As you can see. All right. And I had one request early on, so I'll just get rid of that. Okay. So I have this request here. You can see. I'll just collapse all of this. Okay. So this is a request that has been added. Now what you can do is you can see over here the request structure. So this is how you can query the Google AI models. You can see this is a model that is being used. Here you have the API key. So you have to replace your API key over here. Okay, and then if you go to headers, you have this content type application JSON. Body, you have this body, and this is a question that you're asking to the AI model, how AI works. Okay, what I will do is I'll replace my API key over here. So I'll get my API key from this dashboard. So I've pasted my API key in the params tab. Okay, and it's sensitive over here, so don't disclose your API key to anyone. And here, this is the message that I'm sending to the Google's Gemini model. I'm asking a question where explain how AI works. So I'll say send, and you'll get the response over here. Let us wait for it. So you can see over here, this is the response structure: candidates, content, parts, and you have this text. AI is a broad field encompassing many different techniques, but at its core, okay, you can see the entire definition of what AI is. Okay, and you can see some different information like citation sources over here. Okay, so here it's citing this website over here as the citation. And if you go over here, you have information like usage metadata, like prompt token, candidates token count, total token value, and all of this, and model version as well. Okay, so this entire response you're getting. You can also ask some other questions like what are computers, for example, and you can say send, and you'll get a decent response of the explanation. So you can add your query and you'll get an output over here. So we can make use of this to build apps. Of course, this is a very simple use case. I'm like just asking question and I'm getting the response. But yes, you can imagine, you can, for example, if you're building an e-commerce website, you can send in the list of products over here and the list of user preferences, right? Or the user behavior. And you can ask AI to give some tailored recommendations, right? That's something you can do. If you have a fitness application, you can give the user preferences in terms of meals to the AI, and AI can give some recipes based on those preferences, and you can showcase it to the user. Okay. If you're building a financial product, what you can do is you can take the user information, you can give it to AI and ask if it's eligible for home loan or any sort of tips on how to save money on mortgage and all of that. You can do a lot of stuff. Okay, and you're already seeing the companies around you doing a lot of stuff in AI. Okay, but this is one very simple use case wherein you ask something and you get an output. All right, so I hope this has been useful and I hope you have been able to follow along. So now it's time that we begin setting up our Spring Boot project. So I'm here on our favorite website, start.spring.io. I'm going to select Maven. You can choose Gradle as well if you wish to. I'll select the latest version of Spring Boot, that is a non-snapshot version. And here in group, I'll say com.chat and I'll com.ai. I'll call this as AI. And here in artifact, I'll say Gemini chat. Something like this. Okay, you can select jar and Java version. You can select whichever you want. You can select 23 if you wish to. And over here, in terms of dependencies, I'll add one dependency, which is web, and I'll add one more. I'll say Lombok over here. Now, for making API calls, we will be making use of web client. So I'm going to add web. Okay, this one, okay, Spring Reactive Web, okay, which comes with Spring Web Flux and Netty. Okay, so I'll select this and you can come over here to explore and just go through the pom.xml. Okay, so you will see everything being added over here. Okay, everything looks good. So what you can do is you will generate the entire project. I'll save it onto my local machine over here. Now I've downloaded it over here in this particular location on my desktop because this is where I'm going to build this project. Okay, now I'm calling it Gemini chat. You can even call it Gemini Q&A. All right, we are actually like just getting the response from the AI model. Okay, so you can call it Q&A as well because you're going to ask questions and it is going to give you a response. All right, so I've like extracted it over here. We have this entire project. And what you can do over here is you can come to IntelliJ. You can say open. Now just head over to the extracted version of the project and just select pom.xml over here. Okay, and I'll say okay, open as a project, and I'll say trust projects in this directory because I know like it's a legitimate code. So yes, you can see the project being added and all the scanning is happening over here. Like dependencies are being downloaded. On the bottom right, you can see the progress. Okay. So the project is ready for us to work on. All right. So I hope you have been able to follow along. So now it's time that we begin building the endpoint that will help us interact with the AI model with Google Gemini. Okay, so I'm going to head over to our Java here in this folder over here. Okay, and I'm going to create a new controller. Okay, so I'm going to select this and I'm going to call this as AI controller. Okay, so this has been created. Now, of course, I'm not organizing this into a controller package. You can do this because we are just going to have one controller and one service. Okay, not much of things over here. You can even create a repository and connect it to the database. But I'm keeping things simple because the goal of this is to teach you how you can integrate AI into your applications. Okay, so you have this controller now. And what we're going to do first thing first is we'll mark this as a REST controller over here. Okay, I'm going to also say request mapping over here. Okay, and I'm going to map this endpoint to /API/Q&A, something like this. Okay, like so. Okay, now over here I am going to have I'm going to say public. I'm going to say response entity. And I'll say the response will be string because we're going to return the string response. I'm going to say ask question over here. Okay, so we are asking question to the AI model. Okay, and in the request body, I'm going to say request body over here. Okay, and I'm going to accept a map. Okay, and I'll say oops. So map of string comma string over here. Okay, and I'll say payload over here. Okay, like so. Okay, so this is done. Okay, some problem over here. Map of string comma string, and this is payload. So I'm getting this because it should be at the request body. Okay, and I believe yeah. Now if I yes, so this will be the import. So you have to import this from java.util. I was wondering why this import is not coming, and then I realized I've missed @ over here. Okay, that's okay. Small typos happen. So I have these opening and closing pair of curly braces. Now what I'm going to do is here I'm going to create a variable called question, and I'll say payload.get, and I'll get question from the request that I get. Okay, so now I have this. And I'll say return. Okay, I'll say return response entity dot okay, and I'll return the answer. Now where is answer? Okay, so we need to create answer over here. Okay, so I'm going to say string answer over here, and I'm going to say Q&A service. So this service is not yet created. Okay, but we'll be creating it. So I'll say Q&A service dot get answer over here. This does not exist yet. Okay, I know this. So we'll be shortly creating this, but I'm just adding this for now because we need a service class, right? So we have this Q&A service, which is calling get answer, and it is passing in question that we get from the request. And this Q&A service will return the answer after communicating with the AI model. And we are returning this answer to the user with response as okay. All right, this is done. Now what we need is we need a Q&A service. Okay, so I'll say private final. Okay, Q&A service over here, and I'll say Q&A service. Okay, so this class does not exist yet. I'll just okay, it's not a Maven dependency, it says. Okay, so I'll say create a class. It's being created in the same folder over here. Okay, this is done, and we also need a method over here. This method. So I'll just get this method created as well. This is done. Okay, it has to return something, so it will return this. Okay, this error is gone. Now I'm getting one more error over here that it might not have been initialized. Okay, so if you come to pom.xml, let me see if we have Do we have Lombok over here? Have we added Lombok? Yes, we have project Lombok. So I'll come over here and I'll make use of an annotation over here. I'll say all args constructor, something like this. Okay, so this error goes away. So what it will do is it will generate an constructor with all the arguments, and it will help us in auto wiring this. Okay, and when will it auto wire? Only when the service is managed by Spring. So we need to declare it as service so that it's a Spring managed component now. Okay, and I think we are all set to provide the definition over here in the service. Okay, now over here, what we will do is here we are going to make use of web client builder. Now, if you come over here to pom.xml, we have one more dependency added, which is web flux. Okay, so this provides us with web client. Okay, and it's an HTTP client for making requests. So if you want to make any sort of API request, you can do so with the help of web client. Okay, so we are going to make use of that. And over here in the Q&A service, we are going to have all the code that will help us get the data from Google Gemini. And what we'll be doing is we have access to the question over here. So we are going to send this question to Gemini, and we are going to get the response, and we are going to pass in this response over here in the return to the controller, and controller is going to do the job of displaying it. Okay, so first thing is in this particular thing, what we need to do is we need to first construct the request payload. Okay, so we are sending request to Google Gemini, right? So we also need to construct the request payload. But before this, we need one more thing. Okay, we need things like the API key and the URL. Okay, so we need access to API key and URL over here. Okay, what is the API key and URL of Gemini? Okay, because we need to interact with Google's Gemini, right? So we need access to API key and URL over here, first thing. Then we need to construct the request payload. Okay, because Google Gemini accepts the request in a certain format. So if you come over here to Postman, you will see like this is the request structure in which Google Gemini accepts the request. Now this text can be anything, any question that you want to ask to the AI model and you want to get response for. Okay, so we need to construct this request in our code. Okay, so that is what we are going to do. That is what constructing the request payload means. All right, then we are going to make the API call. Okay, we are going to make API call over here, and then we'll get the response and return it. So return response, something like this. All right, so this is what, okay, the response over here. So this is what we are going to do. All right, now first thing is we need access to the API keys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two variables over here, private string, I'll say Gemini API URL over here. Okay, and I'll have private string Gemini API key over here. So this is the API URL and the API key over here. And over here, I'm going to get this injected. All right, and I'm going to make use of value annotation, and value annotation should come in from Spring Framework Beans Factory. This one, not from Lombok. And here I'm going to say $, and I'm going to say over here, oops. So we need to make sure that these values actually are added in application.properties or application.yaml, whatever you're using. So I'll say Gemini.api.url over here. Okay, and I'll copy this and I'll come over here, and here I'm going to say API.key, something like this. All right, now I'll come over to our application.properties because we need to make sure like these two things exist in our properties file. So I'll copy this, and here I'm going to say URL. I'm going to add the URL, and here I also need access to the key. All right, so I'll add the key. Now we have access to both the URL and the key here in Postman. So this is a URL, okay, and we have key in the end. Now here, if you come in Postman, we already have this URL structure over here. So you have this URL until key is equal to, and then in the end you have key appended. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire thing. All right, and you can add the URL part over here, and you can take the key over here, whatever your key was, you can paste it over here. All right. So this is how it's going to work. All right. But I'm not going to do things. I'm not going to hardcode things this way. You can do it this way. I'm going to just comment this out. And I am actually going to make use of the env variables. So here I'm going to like replace this entire URL. Okay. So I'm going to go till the end. I'm going to delete it and I'm going to say $, and a couple of curly braces. I'm going to say Gemini _ API _ URL. All right. And over here, I'm going to say $, again, open and close curly braces, Gemini API _ key. All right. Now you need to get this value injected, I would say, when the application runs. So what you can do is here, you can have a configuration. So whenever your application runs, okay, so if you run the application like this, all right, you need to enable annotation processing. So you can see this configuration being created at the top. Don't worry that if you're getting an error, don't worry, because we are not done yet. But here you can see this being created. So you can open application properties, Gemini API URL, go to edit configurations, and here you can either link it to the env variables, or so you have the option to link it over here, or you can actually add the variables over here in this syntax. You can see the syntax here. Okay. And for some reason, if you are not seeing environmental variables over here, you have this option of enabling it from here. So you can disable it and you have the option of enabling it. Okay. So I'm going to say Gemini API URL is equal to, I'm going to say apply, and I'm going to copy this entire URL till the end. Okay. And I'm going to come here. So this way, what I'm doing is I'm not having sensitive information like API keys and all hard coded in my properties. Okay. Because if I commit this code to GitHub tomorrow, I don't want the world to have access to my API keys, right? That is secret for myself, right? I'm going to add a semicolon in the end, and here I'll say apply. So don't forget to say apply after making any sort of change over here, because things will go away. Things won't be saved is what I mean to say. All right. So you come over here, you add a semicolon, and you add Gemini API key, and you need to add the value over here. So I'll be just pasting the value over here. I'll be just doing that, and I'll be just saying apply and OK. So I've done that, and you can see these two things we don't need right now. So I'll get rid of this. Okay. So right now what is happening is I have Gemini API URL and API key being configured in the run configurations, and this will be injected whenever I run the application. So we are all sorted when it comes to secrets like API key and API URL. So we don't need to worry about whether the key will get exposed if we push the code to GitHub or not. All right. So this is done. Now what we need to do is we need to start constructing the request payload. So here I'm going to come in and I'm going to say, I'm going to create a map over here of string and an object. Okay. So, right. And we need to make sure we have the information in the format that Google needs. So this is the format, right? We have contents, and then we have parts, and then we have text over here. So I'll copy this. All right. And here I'll come. This is what we need, right? So I'm going to say over here, request body, because this is going to be our request body. I'm going to say map of over here, and I'm going to add a semicolon, and inside this, I'm going to say contents. I'm going to say comma new, and I'm going to have an object array over here like so. And here inside, I'm going to say map again of, and we'll have parts. Okay. So this is an array. This is an array of objects, right? So that is why we have added this new object array over here. And then inside this, again, we need to add key value pairs. So I'm going to say map of, I'm going to add parts, comma. Again, inside parts, we have array over here, right? So what are we going to do? I'm going to again say new object. Oops, not new. It should be new object over here, and array of object. And over here, I'm going to add this, and I'm going to say map of again and text. oops, so it will be text, comma, and I'll add a question. So this is the format in which Google accepts, okay, or expects the data to be. So you can see content, you have parts, this is parts, and this parts is part of an object array, as you can see, right? So this is parts is a part of object array, right? Then again, parts is the key, and then again you have the array over here. This is the array, right? So this is what we are doing over here, and this is the structure that we have made use of, right? Now what we need to do is we need to make an API call, and for making an API call we need web client. So I'm going to scroll up over here and I'm going to create an instance of web client. So I'm going to say like string, or I'm going to say private, not string, private final web client, and you will see this web client coming in from web.reactive, okay, package, and we'll say web client over here. And what we need to do is, okay, so I'm getting an error. I need to add the constructor parameter, and it adds this constructor over here. So what will happen is this is then automatically injected by Spring Boot if you have added this dependency for Webflux. All right. So it is taken care by Spring Boot. You can even get rid of this constructor and you can add a annotation, but I've just added the constructor to keep things simple. All right. And I'll just change this code a bit. So I'll say web client builder dot build is what we need to make use of. So I'll say web client builder. So one second, web client dot, or what we can do is I can say web client dot build. So I'm not getting the suggestion over here. So what I'll do is instead of creating the instance of web client over here, I'll say web client dot, and I'll add build over here. Okay. And over here, I'll say then web client dot build. All right. So this is taken care of now. All right. Now we need to make use of this. Now, how do we make use of this? So here under make an API call, I'm going to come in, I'm going to say web client dot, you have access to, you can see like get, head, a lot of stuff, delete as well. So I'm going to say web client dot post over here, and we're going to make a post request. I'm going to pass in a lot of details like URI. What is a URI? URI is where we are making the API call. Now observe the URI over here. URI is basically our URL, this URL plus the key. That is what forms the URL, right? So here I'm going to say Gemini API URL plus Gemini API key. This is what going to form the URL. I'm going to say dot header. What is the header? For header we need, so if you come over here, headers are content type. So you can copy this if you wish to. I'm going to say, so you can see header name and header value is what we are supposed to pass. So I'll say header name, and over here I'm going to pass in the header values. What is the value? Application/JSON. So I'll just paste it, copy paste it, so that you avoid typos, or if you're feeling lazy, that's completely fine. So you can say body. Now body value is what we are going to use. Here we are going to have request body because this is what we have. This is what we want to send to Google Gemini. So I've added this request body. I'll say dot retrieve over here, dot body to mono over here. And I'm going to say string dot class over here. I'll just shortly explain what this is, and I'll say block over here, and I'll add a semicolon. So what we are doing is when we say body value over here, okay, so here this is clear. We are making a post request. URI is this, header is this. We are saying body value. Now what is the body value? This is attaching the constructed payload as a request body, right? That is what we are doing. Here we have retrieve. Now retrieve is going to execute the request and expect a response, right? Now once we get the response, we are converting the response body into a mono, which is a reactive wrapper containing a string. That is what we are doing over here. And then we are saying dot block, which is converting the reactive mono into a blocking call to get the actual string response. So that is what we are doing. This is something that you need to follow. And over here, you need to return response. Now response is something that we have not created. So we need to say string, and I need to say response is equal to. So the output of this entire API call is what is going to be assigned to response over here. And this is what is going to be sent over here. All right. So yeah, I think this is it. And I believe we are all ready to test this, this application, in my opinion. So let me run this and let us see how this works. Okay. Variable Q&A service not initialized in the default constructor. What's the problem? So we have added all args constructor, but still it's not initialized. And this probably has to do with the Lombok configuration. So I'll come over here. I'll go to, let's say, where is settings over here? Okay, this is settings. All right. And then over here, I'll go under build and I'll say compiler, annotation processing, enabled annotation processing. I'll select Gemini chat. Instead of processor path, I'll select obtain processors from project class path. I'll say apply. Okay. Let me try this again. It should work. So the reason it didn't work because this annotation was not being picked from Lombok, and it was not providing the all args constructor because this annotation was not being picked. And that is why it was saying, hey, Q&A service is not initialized, which is absolutely okay and true as well, right? So I'll come over here now to Postman. We have this, we have our endpoint up and running. So what I will do is I'll create an endpoint over here, add a request. All right. And over here, I'm going to just make an API call to our application. And I'm going to say HTTP :localhost :8080 / API / Q&A / ask over here. And instead of get, this will be a post request. Headers and everything are fine. I'll have a body and I'll select JSON over here. Now, what do I need? I need over here question, right? So let me take this a bit down. I'll say question :, I'll say explain how AI works. So this is my question, for example. Let me send this and let us see whether we get a response. Okay, not found, API Q&A ask. 1 second. Oops, so we have not mapped this to a particular endpoint over here, right? So that is what we need to do. We forgot this. So I'll say post mapping. I'll say /ask over here, like so. All right, I'll rerun the application. We missed this. It will be /API / Q&A / ask. It's up in no time, and I'll send this request. It should ideally give the response. Let us see. Okay, it's taking a bit of time, and you can see the response as well. Okay, let me expand this response. You can see candidates, content, parts, and you can see the text over here. This is the entire text. You have role, you have finish, reason, the usage metadata over here. You don't have citations, which is okay. Sometimes you get citations in the response as well, which is okay. So this is working absolutely okay. And you can see our endpoint is up and working. All right. So yeah, that's how you can build a backend REST API that interacts with Google's Gemini AI models and gives you the response on localhost. Of course, you can deploy it anywhere. It's your choice, but yes, this is how you integrate Gemini AI into your Spring Boot applications. I hope this was useful. So now it's time that we begin working on the front end, and for that we'll need a front end app. So what I've done is I've opened a terminal and I've navigated to the directory where I wish to create my front end project. And I will be executing the npm command. Now to run the npm command, you need to have Node.js installed onto your system. So I'm assuming that you have those tools already added onto your system and installed, right? We'll also need Visual Studio Code, which is a front end, or which is an IDE that is very popular amongst front end devs. Okay, so we'll be making use of Visual Studio Code because it has a great support for front end. So I'm going to say npm create Vite @latest. We are making use of Vite over here, and I'll say, okay, so it's saying that you need to install this. So I'll say yes. Okay, and I'll enter my project name over here. I'll say Gemini Q&A or Gemini chat front end. You can call whatever you want to, and I'll select vanilla over here, or not vanilla, I'll select React because we're making use of React. I'll select JavaScript over here, and it has given us a set of commands over here. All right, so I'll say cd Gemini chat frontend. I'll say npm install over here. I won't start the server over here. I'll be doing that through Visual Studio Code. So I already have Visual Studio Code installed. If you don't have, you can install it. It's free and open source. But what I'll do is I'll open Visual Studio Code over here, and I'll just navigate to the directory over here. So this is the directory Gemini chat frontend. I'll select this folder. This is the project that we have created, and I'll just close this welcome. So this is the project that got created, and I'll head over to terminal. So we don't need to make use of this external terminal that you just saw. All right, you can just add a terminal inside Visual Studio Code. So here I'm going to say npm install just to make sure everything is installed. We have already run this, so you can see up to date is the message that we got. And I'm going to say npm run dev over here. So I'm going to say npm run dev. Now this is going to start the server on this URL. So you can copy this URL and head over to the browser to see the output. And you can see this is the default tab that you get along with this counter. All right. So yeah, this is our application, and it's ready to be modified by you in order to build this front end for interacting with Gemini APIs. Now from the front end UI perspective, what I'll be doing is I'll be adding Bootstrap CSS into my application, and I'll come over here, and you can see npm install Bootstrap is the command that we are going to use. So I'll just add another instance of terminal over here. I'm going to say npm install Bootstrap. Okay, you can even copy this command and execute it. It's allowing you to install Bootstrap with a specific version, but I'll just say install, and it will add a version of Bootstrap into my application. So here, if you come, you should see Bootstrap 5.3.3, which is the latest as I'm recording this video. You might see some other version depending on when you're watching it, but don't worry, concepts won't change. So this would work absolutely fine for you. All right. And once you come here, you can say read the docs, and over here, you also need to basically add this and load this CSS file in your application. Now, if you come to our application, let us see inside node modules, you have this folder called Bootstrap. You should have. Okay. And inside this, you have dist, you have CSS. And if you come over here, you have all the CSS. So you have Bootstrap min CSS over here, right? This is what, this is the CSS that exists, right? Min CSS, you can see, right? So we need to make use of this CSS in our application, and you can either add it this way, all right? But I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this CSS until this path until CSS. And I'm going to come in over here in our application, and there is a file. Okay, so I'll just collapse this node modules. It's pretty huge. There is a file called main.jsx. Over here at the top, I'm going to say import, and I'm going to just paste this over here. Oh, wait a minute. Let me add bootstrap /dist/main.css, or you can actually type in the path as well. You can say min. But I won't type. I actually copied it from there, and I want to avoid typos. So I'm going to make use of this. Okay. Now let us test if this is working fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to index.css. I'm going to remove all the boilerplate CSS, app.css as well. I'm going to remove everything. Save both the files. Both are empty now. And I'll just close this bootstrap min CSS, right? And I'll go to main.jsx and come to app over here, right? Now, if you come over here, there on the Bootstrap website, you'll see something called as buttons, right? So what I'll do is here, I'll copy this primary button, and I'll get rid of this entire CSS that you're seeing, entire thing. and we'll add this button over here. Now let us see if we are able to see this button. You can see this button loads properly with blue color. If it does not show blue color, or if you're not seeing this kind of an output just by adding any sort of Bootstrap component, then there's a problem. There's a problem in the configuration. So either you are not referencing the right file, right CSS over here, or the dependency was not installed. All right. So we have Bootstrap configured now, right? And what we're going to do is now let us begin working on our application. So here I'll start adding the UI, and what I'll do is I'll just collapse this, and I'll just have this. I already have this instance of browser open over here. So what I'll do is I'll just open this side by side. All right, so that you can see the output as and when I code. All right, and I'll just take it this way. Oops. So over here, what I'm going to do now is we'll start defining the UI. So I'll get rid of the button first of all. Okay, and here what I need a div. Okay, now this div is going to have the class name of app, like so. I'll need a header over here, like so, and this header is going to have a class name of we are going to say bg primary, like so. I'm going to say text of white over here, and I'm going to say text center, and I'm going to say py of 4. Let me save this. So you can see this header coming in at the top. bg primary is nothing but this primary color, which is blue, right? Now within this header, I'm going to have a heading saying Gemini chat bot or Gemini Q&A bot, whatever you want to call it, you may call it, right? I'm extra zoomed in, by the way, 400%. I'll reset this. So this looks a bit decent, Now over here, what I'm going to do is we need chat input. Okay. Now chat input does not exist because here we need to get the input from the user. So I'm going to say input over here. Okay. And here we will have the response being displayed. Right now, input and response both are separate components that we need to add over here. So what I will do is I'll add chat input over here, and I'll say on submit, or I won't add on submit. Let's add that later. But chat input is not recognized as of now, and chat response also is not recognized. We need both of them. So we need to create these two components. So what I will do is I'll come over here. Under src, I'll create a new file. I'll say components / I'll say chat input, like so. And oops, so this has to be JSX. I missed adding the JSX extension, but I'll add that. Okay, so here rename, I'll say .jsx, right? And I also need chat. So what was that? Chat response. So I'll copy this. I'll say chat response .jsx. Now both of these are components which we need to define. So I'm going to say const chat response over here, and I'm going to mark this as arrow function. Okay, and I'm going to say return. What are we going to return? We are returning a h1 saying input or response, like so. All right, I'll save this. I'll copy this, come to chat input, paste it, and instead of chat response, I'm going to say chat input over here, and instead of response, I'll say input, like so. Let me save this, come over here, and we need to get these two imported, right? So I'll get chat input imported and chat response also imported. So if you scroll up, okay, the input was not added, but let me save this. This won't work. All right, the input is not being added because where have you exported them? So I'll say export default chat input, like so. And here chat response, you're going to say export default chat response. And here we need to now import them. So like so, and over here, right? So they are imported now and they'll work fine. All right. So I'll get rid of these SVGs. We don't need them. Okay, but you can see input and response being added here. Now what we need to do is we need to develop these files. We need to develop input so that user can see the input. And we also need to improve on the response, like how are we displaying the response. So the input and response is going to be managed by two separate components. All right. Now here, under instead of returning the header, I'm going to say return a div for me. All right, and have this div as class name of container and my of 4 over here. Okay, and here I'm going to say div, and I'm going to have on submit. All right. So right now we don't have this function, but I'll just add this function. I'll say on submit handle submit, and here at the top I'll add a function. I'll say const handle submit, like so, and I'll pass in e over here, which is the event object, and here I'm going to say this will be an arrow function, of course. So this is going to be empty for now. All right, but yes, we are submitting something. And here let me add one more div. So inside this div I'm going to have the form. So I'm going to say class name of form group, like so. And over here I'm going to add things like label. So let me add label, and label will be ask a question, like so. You can see ask a question appearing over here, which is fair enough. And I'm going to say this is HTML for question over here. Now what is question? So we'll add an input. So I'm going to say input, like so, and it will be self-closing tag. And over here I'm going to say type of text and a class name of form control. And I'm going to say ID of question and placeholder of enter your question. And here you're going to have value of question, like so. And we'll say on change. So on change, what we need to do is we need to update the question. Right, so this question is right now not defined, of course, so we need to add a state over here. So we'll be keeping track of what question user is asking with the help of a state, and the state itself will be called question, and it will have a setter called set question, and this will be set to use state, and it will be set to empty. Okay, so this is done. Now over here I need to make use of e. Okay, oops, the event object, and I'm going to say set question, and over here I'm going to say e dot target dot value, like so. Okay, so we are passing in the value of whatever user is entering into the state variable, which is keeping track of state. And then here we have a button submit, right? So here I'm going to say submit, like so. And here I'm going to say type of submit and class name of btn primary, and you'll have margin top of 2. If you save this, you'll see this text field appear. Enter your question, ask a question label, and you have a submit button. All right. Right now, nothing is happening on submit, but we need to develop this function. So what I will do is I'll say over here e.prevent default. So this will prevent the default behavior over here. I'm going to say if. So let me add a if statement, if question dot trim. So if there is any question, what do we do? What do we do? We need to say on submit, and I'll say question. Right, and here I'll add a semicolon, and here I'm going to say set question. I'll reset the question, right? So this is done. Okay, so yeah, this is how we are submitting this form. All right, so what we are doing is we are having an if statement. Within if, we are checking if there is any question. If there is, we are calling this on submit. Now what is on submit? So on submit is a prop that this thing will accept. It will say on submit over here. So this is a function that is being passed as a prop to this particular component, I would say. All right. And we need to pass this from the parent. So where's the parent? Parent is in app.jsx. So here you have to make sure that you have this function that is being passed over here. So here I'll say chat input, and on submit, we'll say handle question submit. Now this is not yet defined, so we need to define this. So I'll scroll up here, and I'll add a semicolon here, which I missed. I'm going to say const, so I'll say const handle question submit. Of course, this will be a asynchronous function, so I'll make use of await over here, because we'll be doing an API call, right? So I'm going to pass in question over here. So this is the parameter, and here I'm going to say, so we need to have a few states over here. Okay, so we have count over here. I don't need count. I'm going to add a response. We need to keep track of response. So I'm going to say set response over here, and response is going to be null over here, of course. And then we have const loading. Now, when the API call happens to the backend and backend interacts with the Gemini servers or Google servers, there will be a delay, right? So we need to show a loader over here. So, and for that, we need to keep track of the loading state. So that is what we are doing. So here inside this function, I'm going to say set loading true. And here I'm going to say set response as null. So I'm again initializing the response to null because we don't have a response yet, right? And here I'm going to make use of try catch because we are going to make an API call to the backend server, right? And within this, I'm going to say alert failed, or we need to say failed over here, and I'll say failed to get the response, right? And here I need to add a finally, because after whether there's an error or whether there is a successful response, the finally will get executed, and inside finally we need to set the loading to that of false, because either the error has happened or the request was successfully executed. Now I'm not doing any API call over here yet. We need to do that, but for now this is done. And if I save this, okay, you get an error, unexpected reserved word await. So here this await is unexpected. So what is the problem over here? I'm sorry, so await won't come over here. Await will be used inside. We have to make use of async over here. I'm sorry about that. So here, when making the API call, we'll be making use of await. That is what we'll be doing. Okay, so the error goes away and you have the app looking good, right? Now there has to be an API call that we'll be making use of, but right now we'll just pause on that, and until then we'll work on chat response. Now what is chat response? Chat response is the component that is going to help us display the response. So it will accept the response, of course. So I'm going to say over here response is equal to, and here I'm going to pass in response like so. And here inside chat response, I need to even accept it, right? So this is coming in as a prop. So what I will do is I'll get this over here. I'll say response like so, and we'll make use of this inside the application, right? So what I will do is I will come over here. I'll say if response, if there is no response, then what would you do? What would you do? You would return null. All right. If there is no response, you return null straight away. If there is any response, then what do? We have div. We'll say class name, and I'll say container, and margin y of 4. I'll get rid of this. Now within this div, I'll add a h3, and I'll say response. I'll save this. Okay. And yeah, this is done. So this thing makes sure that there is no output that is being displayed if there is no response. So right now you can see that went away. There's nothing being displayed because response does not exist. right? But if response exists, what do we do? So what we need to do is, if you come over here to Postman, you'll see this is how the response structure is. You have candidates, all right, and within this you have content and parts like this, right? So you need to keep this structure in mind. You have information like role, you have information like usage metadata, which of course you can display. I'll show you how you can do that. So I'll come over here, and here inside over here, what I need is, first of all, I need a state variable. So I'll scroll up here and I can say, okay, after this check, we'll create a state variable. So I'll say const and candidates, and I'll say usage metadata over here. Okay, and I'll say response. All right. So this is not a state actually. I said that we are creating a state, but this is not a state. What we are doing is we'll take the response and destructure it into two things, candidates and metadata. All right. So here, if you come, if I'm not able to collapse this. Okay. You can see your candidates, and then you have second thing as usage metadata. All right. So we'll make use of candidates first. We have destructured the response. We don't need any straight variable right now because we just have the response. We destructured it. Now we have two parts, candidates and metadata. What we can do is we can simply display the output, right? And what I'll do over here is I'll say candidates and I'll say dot map. So we'll make use of map and I'll say candidates, candidate comma index over here, and here I'll say round bracket, and inside this over here div. Oops, so I'm getting an error. Let me see what the error is. So these two are opening and it's closing, so there should not be any error ideally. Okay, so this should work fine. We have div. Now inside this div, we'll make use of card sort of a structure. If you're not aware of cards, Bootstrap has a way to display cards. So you can take a look at the documentation over here. These card structure is what we are going to use. So I'll make use of card body, card title, and card text over here to display the data. Okay. In fact, I can simply actually copy this. So let me actually copy this card structure. Let me come over here, and instead of this div, I'll just paste this, right? And there's no image, so I'll just get rid of this image over here, right? Now over here, I'm saying card. Okay, I'll add a MB of 3, which is margin bottom 3. And I don't need style over here. I'll get rid of this. Instead, what I will do is I'll say key. So I need to add key for optimization standpoint. I'll just say key is equal to index, right? We have card body. Now card body is fine. Card title, instead of card title, we'll say candidate. And I'll say index +1 over here, something like this, right? And here I'll say card text. So what is a card text? So if you get rid of this, card text can be candidate dot content dot parts, and I'll say 0 over here. Okay, and this will be text. Now, how come it's candidate.content.parts? So if you take a look at the JSON, it's candidates.content.parts, and this is an array. So we have made use of parts 0 over here because this is an array, and I'll say dot text, right? So this is done. So now after this is being done, okay, I'll just zoom a bit over here so that we have some space. We don't need this button over here, right? So I'll get rid of this button. After we have displayed this text, I'll say h of 6 over here. Okay, and I'll say citations. Now sometimes what would happen is there would be citations that you can choose to display. All right, you can display it as unordered list over here, and you can say candidate, and if citation exists, you can say citation metadata. So this is how it will be structured, and within citation metadata, you will have citation sources like so. And within this, I'll say map, and I'll say source comma ID X, which is nothing but the index, and I'll make use of this over here. Okay, and I'll say li over here, which means that this will be rendered as a list, and I'll make use of a. I'll say li key is equal to ID X over here, and a basically will be href over here. Now href will be source.url like so. Okay, and I'm going to say target over here. Target will be underscore blank. So it opens in a new tab, and here I'll have source.url like so. Target blank, and here I can say rel as no opener, no referer. So I don't want to provide any sort of reference over here. You can skip these tags if you are not interested in doing so. And I'll have a space over here. Okay. And then over here, I will say indexes. And I'll say colon, and we'll say source dot start index, and I'll say minus source dot end index. All right, so this is done. We have this being rendered, the citation. We have UL closing, div, couple of divs closing, and you can choose to display the metadata information. So you have the metadata information. So I'll add h4 usage metadata over here. Okay. Now within metadata, you have things like, if you collapse this, you have prompt token count, candidates token count, and the token value. So I'll copy this for a while. I'll come over here. Okay. I'll paste it over here, and over here, I'm going to say p tag. Okay. And oops. So this p tag, I'll say total tokens like so. And here you can say usage metadata dot, you have prompt token count. So I'll make use of this. Okay. This is done, and we'll replicate this essentially. So I'll copy this thrice. So we have 3 data points. So I'll display it thrice. Candidates token count, and then I have total token count over here. Okay. So here I'll say, okay, this will be prompt tokens. So we have total tokens. We have or let me change the order essentially. So instead of total token count, I'll display the total token count at the top. So I'll say total tokens. Then we have, this is the prompt tokens, right? So I'll say prompt tokens over here. And then for this, I have response tokens. Okay. Like so. Oops. So you can display it this way. If you want to change the order of this, you can. I'll get rid of this over here, the structure. And I think we are all set with the chat response. We don't need anything else. All right. I'll come to chat input. Chat input also, we have everything. Chat response. What we need now is a way to do an API call, right? Now, how we're doing an API call, we're going to make use of Axios. So I can open the terminal, like a new terminal. And here I'll say npm install Axios. Now Axios is a client. It's a library that provides a client using which you can make use, or you can make use of that client to do HTTP calls. Okay. Now here under src, I'm going to create a new file under services folder, services/api.jsx. Like so, right? So it's created under services. Now over here, what we need to do is I'll say export const, and I'll say fetch chat response like so. Okay, and this is going to be a sync over here, and a sync arrow function, of course, and I can say question, and inside this we'll have try catch. So I'll say try catch statement. Okay, error is fine. And here I can say console.error, and I'll pass in the error object. All right. And this will be semicolon, and I'll say throw error. Okay, that an error has occurred. Now over here, I'm going to say const response. And what is the response going to be? It's going to be await Axios. So make sure Axios is imported here. Axios.post. You have a way to do a post API call, and you will have something called as API URL. Now I'll have API URL. We need to create this variable, of course, and I'll pass in the question here, like so. Okay. Now what is the API URL? So you come over here, you say const API URL, and you come over here, you get this URL, and you paste it over here. So this is done. All right. So we are doing a post request to this API call with this question over here. Okay, question in the request body. And what you can do is you can return response.data over here. All right. So this is done. This is completely handling the API call for us. Now what we need to do is we need to consume this API call, or we need to consume this data in app.jsx. Where are we going to do this? Of course, in this function where we didn't write the code. We have to write code within this try block. So here I'm going to say const API response over here, and I'm going to say await fetch chat response, and you can see fetch chat response getting imported at the top, and here I'm going to say question as an input, right? And the response that I get, I'm going to say set response to response. Okay, wait a minute. So set response, and I'm going to pass in API response over here. So done. I think we are all set. Let me minimize this and let us see how this is working now. All right. So I'll have it this way, side by side. Let me refresh. Okay. Ideally, it should fail saying some sort of course error. Okay, because we are doing a cross origin request from a front end on a different URL to a backend that is on different URL. So what is API? Let's say I'll submit. No response. Let me come over here. Okay, there's no error as well. Surprising. So where is the problem? So we've missed something. Handle. Okay, so let me have, okay, so chat input over here. We have on submit, handle question submit. So this should ideally be working. Handle question submit. We have handle question submit over here. So I checked the network request and I realized like the API call is not happening to the backend. The reason for this is this form is not getting submitted, and the reason for this is this, I added this as a div, this form, and not as a form. So it has to be in the form tag. Save it, send it, and let us see if, okay, you can see now the request is going to the backend. Let us see whether we get any response. So you can see course error over here. You can see the request has been blocked. Now this is a feature of modern browsers that cross origin requests are blocked. So you cannot make a API call from one URL to another. This is for security reasons. If you want to make this happen, you need to enable it manually in the backend. Okay, which means you need to tell backend that, hey, you will get permission, you will get a request from such a application that is running on the front end, and this is the URL, and please provide data. So we need to head over to backend is what this means, and we need to come over here. I'll create a config file over here. I'll call this as web config because we are changing the backend configuration over here essentially. I'll just minimize this as well. And over here, I'm going to say implements web MVC configurer. All right. And over here, I'm going to override a method. Okay. What is the method? I will override. Right click, generate, override. And here you have a method called add course mapping. You can see this add course mapping. So I'll override this. You get access to this. Also, one more thing, you need to make sure that this file is marked as configuration with the configuration annotation, right? And over here, I'll get rid of this code over here. Okay, and I'll say registry dot add mapping. We'll add the mapping. So we'll add this for all the API paths over here for this application. I'll say, I'll say dot allowed origins, and I'll say over here, so I'll say HTTP localhost colon 5173, and I'll say dot allowed methods. What are the allowed methods? These are get. So we are allowing get, post, we are allowing put, we are allowing delete, we are allowing options, and we'll go over here. We'll say allowed headers. So allow all headers. Okay, so you can see the level of configuration that you can do in Spring Boot. You can say allowed credentials. So allowed credentials, and I'll say allow credentials to true, and I'll save this. All right, this is done, and I don't think we need to do anything else. I'll just run this. Let us see if we are now able to make an API call to the backend. So whatever host is, if you are running on a different host, just be sure to change this. Okay, this is up and running. Come over here, and here, let me clear this, and we'll say, okay, failed to get a response. I'll just refresh. We'll say, what is an API over here? Okay, I'll say submit. Okay, it's taking a bit of time, and you get the response, and you get an error as well. Did you mean class name? Okay, so we have mentioned class somewhere, and it's telling us that did you mean class name? So I think we have mentioned it somewhere. Okay, I'm not sure where, but if you, it's not a big deal. Okay, class name. Okay, I don't see where we are, but let me figure this out. So this is coming in which file? So if you come over here to chat response, here we had copied some code from the Bootstrap website. So here it should be, instead of class, this should be class name, right? So I'll just update this over here everywhere. All right, so we don't get any sort of warnings. Okay, but you can see over here, this app is working fine. You can see we asked what is API, we got the response. You don't have any citations. This is the usage metadata over here. Okay, so it's working absolutely okay. You can handle the loading state as well if you wish to. So here, what you can do is you can say if loading, then one second, if it's loading, then you can return h1, and you can say loading over here, loading, like so. Okay, so there is a problem. Let me see what, okay, we added this in a wrong file. Okay, there's no loading state over here. I'll just save this. We need to add this in app.jsx here, because here is where we have the loading state. So I'll add it over here, like so. Save this, and let us see now the output. Okay, where is, or tell me something about United States. Okay, let me submit this. Okay, and you can see the output over here. Okay, so we didn't see, one second, we didn't see the loading state being working properly. It's because we don't have return over here, like so. This should be wrapped in return, like so. Let me see if this works now. Okay, so what is physics, like so. If you say submit, you'll see loading, and you have the response. Of course, this can be improved. You can improve on this. That's absolutely okay. But this is looking good, and now you have the output. You can improve it by not disabling or adding a loading message over here. Let me also do that. It's not a big thing. So I'll just disable this, and I'll copy this message, and you can come over here. Okay, so chat input is over here, chat response, right? So if it's loading, you can say if loading, show the loader, like so. Okay, something like this you can do. And you can wrap this inside a pair of round braces, like so, right? So this is being done now. So if is not a good thing to use in JSX, and instead of that, we'll make use of ternary operator. It's the same thing. So I'll say loading. If there is loading, then come over here. I'll add and over here. Okay, and this will be displayed. So it's good now, like so. Let me save this. You can see. Now I can pass in what is chemistry, like so. Submit, you'll see loading and you'll see the output, right? So this is looking good. You can just tone it down to H3 if you need, like so. But you can see the output that you're getting is perfectly great. And this is how you can build a chatbot or Q&A bot that interacts with Gemini. And of course, we have not spent a dime on this, right? It has a free plan, which is generous, I believe. And I have been using it a lot recently. So you should check it out and play around with Gemini and build some interesting use cases. I hope this was useful and I hope you have been able to follow along.